Hey everyone. My name is Michael O from TSP Smart Spaces. So we're a residential and commercial integrator out of the Boston area. But we actually work all over the world. I was in Berlin last week putting together AV systems for kayak.com, and we work in Iceland, New England, California, all over the place. So today I'm presenting about cracking the MDU code. So it's been our fight for the last couple of years to try to get into luxury multi-unit residential business. And so I wanted to share some of the experiences that we've had in trying to crack that market and some of the complexities around it and how it's different from the traditional high-end luxury space. So today I'm just going to cover a couple of things. First, we're just going to define MDUs, multi-unit residential, at least in terms of what I care about, which is getting good margins, good profits, and creating a good pipeline for my business as a residential integrator. And then we're going to talk about really what the state of smart condos, smart apartments are to date, like what's the technologies that are being used, how are they being presented in the market, and in my opinion, how it's not really helping out anybody in the way that they're doing it now. And then we'll talk about sort of the different stakeholders and the different motivators that are in the MDU process, which are very different from the traditional stakeholders that we deal with in high-end luxury residential. There we go. All right. So I wanted to show you a few of the projects that we worked on in this space. We started in Reykjavik, Iceland, actually, in the Osterhofen project in the upper right-hand corner. That's a 71-unit luxury residential condo. Hey, guys. In Reykjavik, in downtown Reykjavik. I'll talk a lot more about that project. And then we took that model and we moved into the Boston area, which is our home turf. And we tried it out in 566 Columbus, which is a mid-range to higher-end luxury condos in Boston. And then we're applying it as well to luxury towers like St. Regis and Raffles. And those are names you may recognize because they're all over the world. They're sort of known as these luxury brands. And that's a big part of luxury MDUs is these residential towers and these luxury towers. But as you move through this journey, there's going to be completely different stakeholders and different motivations like I was talking about. Okay, so what is MDUs or multi-unit residential? Of course, the term is pretty broadly used, so I'm going to narrow it down for the purposes of today and our talk and our audience. First off, we're really talking about luxury condos and not luxury apartments. It's a little bit too long for me to go into why, but the economics simply don't work out. If you're a landlord trying to make kind of investments in an apartment that somebody's going to rent, you simply aren't going to put the money into it like somebody who's buying a luxury condo in one of these towers. Second thing is you have to aim for a certain cost per square foot. The number that we've determined is around $1,500 per square foot is sort of where you need to be in an average per square foot for one of these condos. And the size of that condo needs to be 1,500 square feet or more. Now, a lot of these principles also may apply to more traditional gated communities, but you're looking for something that has these characteristics. If you multiply those numbers, 1,500 by 1,500, that means your purchase price of a unit in one of these condos needs to be about 2.2 million or above, right? And at that number, if somebody's willing to spend, let's say, 1 to 2% of that purchase price on additional smart home technology, then you're talking about real numbers, right? And those are the things that you need to be looking for. Now, it's not to say that if you're in a secondary metropolitan market that doesn't have numbers like this, that you can't make it work, but it is much harder. Because you're going to make an upfront investment in terms of the time, effort, even some hard costs to get into these things, and you need to make sure that the economics of the building work out that you get your money back and then a lot more. The other things you're looking for are these branded towers, something that has a recognized name on it. You may think that those towers already have providers that maybe are traveling the world with the Four Seasons or Raffles, and that's not the case. Most of these developments are actually locally invested and developed, and they simply go out to these brands like the Raffles and they make a pitch to say why you need to have your name on our building. And you're going to make money, we're going to make money. So actually there is a lot of local development money relationships that work into branded towers, even though they're globally recognized. You can also aim this at experience-oriented communities, so gated communities, but we're not talking about sort of just anybody and anybody that wants to do property development in a gated community. You're looking for somebody that has a concept, that has a marketing narrative that smart home is going to work with. And finally, one of the things to look for, especially in the luxury towers, is designs that really need a lot of shades. Floor-to-ceiling windows, multiple facades. Shades are a huge part of making this profitable. And so if you're in the residential, luxury residential business and you're not doing shades, and you're trying to get into this type of world, then I would highly recommend you get good at shades first before trying to crack this. All right, so let's look at the state of play currently in the market. Smart apartments and smart condos as they're being sold today. It's a very product-led approach. There's always access control, right? You guys have probably seen Butterfly 2N, on these buildings. Maybe some smart thermostats, maybe some lighting control, right? So they tend to be focused on putting a few products into these units to call them smart home residences. I call this approach DIY done en masse, right? They're basically just taking the same stuff that anyone can go into a Home Depot and then, putting it on the walls, right? They're taking, effectively your DIY smart home technology and then applying it en masse and then trying to sell the entire building as a smart building. And I call this smart washing, right? Just like greenwashing, when a company makes a token gesture towards the environment and then they say that they're environmentally friendly, it's exactly the same thing with smart technology. And I give a good example here from a building that we did not work on in Boston, and this is just literally off their website. NEMA Boston brings together technology and luxury finishes to create Boston's smartest residence in the Seaport. Smart home technology in each residence includes ultra-fast internet, which everybody has, especially in the city, Lutron Caseta lighting system, which anyone can get going to Home Depot, and Ecobee 3 thermostats, which anyone can buy on Amazon, right? For those of us in the industry, what of those things makes that building the smartest residence in Boston, right? The problem is the real estate developers and marketers get away with this because there's really not a very good definition of what smart home technology is, right? But the educated consumers, as we're seeing, people that have built smart homes, that have renovated smart homes, a lot of these buyers are second and third property buyers, and they may have a 10,000, 15,000 square foot home that has smart home technology. They know the difference between token smart home stuff and the real things that us as custom integrators put in. So, to summarize, the current approach is all show, no substance, right? It's not really creating any homeowner value, right? You think about what it takes to put those things on the wall, and what does it actually increase the value of the home? Zero, except maybe by the $200 or $300 that developer spent at Home Depot or ordered online. It's a solely marketing-focused approach, right? It's simply just saying we're a smart building and trying to get away with it. And then it creates operational complexity. There's the handover of all these different services that's part of this. And it really doesn't pave the way for upgrades, right? For those of us in this industry, we know what it took to put those things in. You're not making it any easier to upgrade that system to a smart home system like a Lutron, RAW 3 system, or adding Savant or Crestron just by putting those things in. You've really added very little value. So that's the current state of play. Before we talk about kind of how our approach is, let's talk a little bit about the different stakeholders and the different motivators in the luxury MDU market. And this is very different from the traditional stakeholders that we have and we deal with single-family luxury home automation and smart homes. We have the developer and the real estate teams, right? Now, the developer is, of course, the money people that are putting all these dollars down to build these huge towers or maybe a large gated community. The real estate teams, I define this as what tends to be the internal real estate teams. I'll give you an example. The Raffles in Boston sells 140 condos on top of 140 hotel rooms as well that's part of the hotel. 140 condos to sell. They have an entire real estate team that they have hired in that works completely out of that building, just solely focused on their building. So that's the real estate team that needs to be supporting you and what you do. Then you have the buyers, right? This is familiar territory. The buyers are interested in experience. They're interested in luxury. You know, they might be interested in remote management because it's a second or third home, and they're not necessarily interested in price. Whereas the developer and the real estate team, it's all about price because it's all about return on investment, right? And they want to avoid operational complexity at the same time. Anything that slows down the build, the commissioning, the handover, the closing, when they get their money, is something they don't want to do. Then finally, there's the design team. That's another stakeholder. And this is actually a stakeholder that we're all pretty familiar with in luxury residential, because if you're doing large-scale luxury smart homes, you probably know a lot of architects, a lot of builders, a lot of people in the subcontractors world that will tell you when there's a job that's coming up that's appropriate for you. In luxury MDU, it's not that these people aren't your friends, but you cannot depend on them the same way that you depend on your business and your channel in single-family luxury homes. And I'll explain why in a little bit. Okay, so let's say you got in through the design team. Architect, GC, builder, subcontractor says, hey, there's this big tower that's being built. You need to be part of it. You talk to the architect. They say, oh, that's great. We need somebody who really knows smart home technology to be in on this product, somebody that can put in access control for us, right? That's great. You're in the project, right? But the design team on a job like this is much more like a commercial design team, right? They are much less like an architect that works on custom homes. Architects that work on custom homes, they're very flexible. They want to see integrated systems. They want to see impressive aesthetics, function, all that kind of stuff. Architects, GC specifiers on these projects, they want you to hit the spec and do it as low cost as possible, right? So you have a limited scope for technology, right? Maybe you're going to do some amenity spaces or some access control, right? Well, look, you know, that sucks for us, right? Then you've got pricing pressure from the GC. The GC says, I don't really care if this does more or somebody's going to take more value. I have to hit this specification for a dollar figure as low as possible, right? That also sucks for us. And then you don't have access to the buyers. The buyers are how you make money in this world. And if the design team says, we're the architect or the designers for this building, and we can introduce you to the buyers, they're kind of lying, right? They can introduce you to somebody else who can introduce you. Maybe they can introduce you to the developers. Maybe they can introduce you to the real estate team. But the design team is so far from the people that actually buy these units, they're not going to be the ones that get you in, okay? So our traditional channel of getting business through architects and GCs and builders doesn't work exactly the same way here. Okay, so who do you want to go to? Well, it's obvious you want to go to the developers and you want to go to the real estate teams that are internal to these buildings and these complexes. They have more control. They're closer to the buyers, right? In fact, the real estate people can introduce you directly to a buyer before closing, right? Which is exactly where you want to know them. But they want to keep the complexity of the systems low. They do want to keep costs low. And they don't want you to slow down the process, right? So if you go in and you say, well, I want to put speakers in every room, I want to make this a really nice, luxury setup with whole home audio, I want to put sound bars and TVs, they're going to say, no, no, no. Anything that slows down the process for us getting the money from the owner is something we don't want to do, all right? All of those things has to come after closing. Okay, so how do you tackle this? It's a two-pronged approach. You focus on design services for the developer and the development team. And by extension, you're sort of serving the design team on this, but you're working for the developer if you can. And then for the real estate team, you're focusing on the marketing side of it. So on the design services side, you want to just focus on infrastructure. You don't want to put in bells and whistles. What you want to do is you want to sit down with the plans that they already have for the building, and you want to say, well, look, you need low voltage points here, here, and here. You need power for your TVs here and here. You need conduit going to possible keypad locations, right? You need wiring or conduit that will run to the windows, right? I was talking about these floor-to-ceiling windows, right? There's so many of these towers that are built that don't have pockets and don't have any method to get power. Yes, Lutron sells the wire-free palladiums, and that's a great-looking solution. But ultimately, if we could have wiring to every window, we would want it, right? So you need to be able to influence that. And you're just telling them, you're giving them that advice and consultation on the things that really make an MDU, a luxury MDU, something that is ready to be upgraded as a smart home, right? And you're showing them a path to that return on investment. Because to be honest, the dollars that they're putting into these units is not huge. They're not paying for speakers in every room. They're just paying for conduit, wiring, and maybe a little bit of space for a rack or a structured wiring box, right? So then for the real estate teams, you're tackling it by focusing on the marketing side. You're going to help them to develop marketing materials. And that means internally you have to develop this yourself. This is not a muscle that we have as technology companies, but is one that is very key here. Brochures and websites. I'm not talking about a full-blown website, a microsite, something that's built on Squarespace or Wix. It doesn't have to be huge, but it has to be informational. You use technologies like Matterport, I'll show that in a little bit. And then you also invest in the model units. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay. So if you have these steps and you've worked through the developers and you work through the real estate team, then they introduce you to the buyers, and that's how you make money. Okay. So I'll show you what we did in Osterhofen. This is 71 units, luxury condos, Reykjavik, Iceland, CD award winner, Lutron Excellence Award winner in 2021. We're still deploying upgrades in this year because that's how long these projects not only take, but how long they generate revenue for you. The package in the unit is very similar to what we were talking about before. Smart thermostats, access control, lighting control. But instead of Caseta, we're using Raw2 Select. In this particular project, we worked with Lutron to put in a particular kind of dimmer that you could upgrade to a HomeWorks platform, and you could put on a Palladium keypad without switching out the hardware that's in the walls and the ceilings, right? And so that's the difference between using Caseta versus something that's more expandable, something that gives you more options. And we also used a Savant Smart Host just to give a basis of that more full smart home experience, give people a remote app that controlled things. And we spent a lot of time with the design team on infrastructure and wiring. So if you look in this ceiling here, there's a conduit that runs from the utility closet into that ceiling where somebody would put in-ceiling speakers. There's no wire there. It's just a PVC tube, Smurf tube as you call it, or whatever. But it means that if a client wants to upgrade in the future, they can do that without opening up the walls, without patch, paint, any of those things that they have to deal with, right? And What's amazing and what we found out is consumers are now educated enough to see the value in that. Luxury consumers have opened up their walls too many times, and they see the value in having something that doesn't require a carpenter, a painter, a plasterer, just to put in a couple speakers, right? Another little view of this space. So if you're ever in Reykjavik, that's Harpa, which is the concert hall and convention center. That's the Marriott Edition that was just built, and that's Osterhofen. So you can see that. On the marketing side, here's what we did. And this is, I think, where this is very unique in terms of how we approach this, right? We did the brochure, the microsite, and we talked about the model units. I'll just sort of show you what I mean on each one of these things. So this is the brochure. We modeled this brochure after a car specification brochure from a Mercedes, Rolls-Royce, any of the high-end luxury. Just go into their dealerships, if they let you in, and take one of their brochures. And we mapped all of the same things, right? Those are highly technical objects, right? These luxury cars have so many features, but yet they're sold in a packaged, upgradable way, which is really clear for people to spend their money. And we modeled around the same thing. There's packages, base plus premium bespoke. We worked with the company that did the renderings for the marketing materials for the entire complex. We got some more renderings. We matched all the colors, the quality, all of that of the materials. And this is in every closing package that's handed over. This is in the model units, in the design studio, the sales gallery. Any place that they're trying to sell the units, your stuff is in there too. What else we have is we worked on the model unit. Within the model unit itself, of course, all of these places will have some place that you can walk through. You can see their amazing finishes, all the care and craftsmanship that's gone into a luxury unit. We've done the same thing with smart home tech, right? In the master bedroom, we did, the plus. In the kitchen, we did the premium. We did palladium keypads. We added speakers in the ceilings. In the living room, we did Amina invisible speakers. We did an LG wallpaper TV. These are all investments that we made. They're definitely in the 5 figures, but it's worth it, and I'll show you why these numbers work out. And if you're smart, you make a contract with the developer and say, you're not going to pay for any of this, but when you sell the unit, if you sell it with this technology in it, then we get our money back. It can be costs. You don't have to worry too much about making much margin on this, but you try to recover those costs in whatever way you can. Here's some other elements. The microsite, very easy. Take information off of your website, vendor, information about shades. Take images from speaker companies, renderings from the condos, and you put it all together. We put a kiosk together that shows off Lutron and Basalt, different keypads, and put that in the design studio. So when somebody is making a decision about a granite countertop, at the same time they're seeing what a Basalt keypad looks like, a Fibonacci, with their high-end finishes. So suddenly, that entire narrative is all together in one. And then we use Matterport. You guys familiar with Matterport? Have you seen that? Okay. If you bought or had maybe rented an apartment, you'll see these types of technologies out there quite a lot. Oops. Go back. Go back. There we go. So Matterport's a virtual walkthrough technology, and it uses things called Matter tags. So you can get the Matterport camera for $2,000 or $6,000 for their top-end camera. It will take a 360 image, it'll put it on a website that somebody can do a virtual walkthrough, then you can add Matter tags. And you can see we added a Matter tag for Lutron Savoya shades up there. So you're helping to educate the users of what the value is that they're getting. You can show them that there's conduit in the ceiling for speakers in the future, right? Things that they are going to put value on as part of their buying journey. All right, so let's look at the numbers. In Osterhofen, there's 64 units that are non-affordable units, right? Of those 64 units, we've done upgrades on 45% of those condos, right? And there's still about 10% that we're still quoting. These are the penthouses, the units that have sold last. And about, basically it's going to work about half and half, right? Let's look at what that generates from a revenue standpoint. This graph shows the value of the unit going across. So you have value for your units being sold for $700,000 equivalent to $4.5 million. The more color that you see, the more upgrades there are. When you see green there, that means that people have done upgrades. And what you can see clearly is that 1.5 to 2 million is when more than 50% of the unit owners do upgrades, right? And when I'm talking about upgrades, what am I talking about? 2 Sonoses and a TV? I'm talking a little more than that, right? And this is where shades come in. In these units, they're not delivered with any sort of window coverings. If you have motorized shades as part of that model unit and a part of your marketing materials, the average upgrade per unit, $35,000. When you take the hard costs of the equipment out of it, that's a gross profit of $20,000 per unit, right? So you can do that math. This is $1 million project when you put all those units together and all those upgrades, right? So if you're making investments, $10,000, $20,000, $25,000 up front into all that marketing and model unit stuff, you're making it back as long as you've got the right way and the right approach to doing this. All right, so let's look at one last model before I close up. And that's if you don't have access to the developer. Right? Let's just say that the only people you have access to is the real estate. That's a much more likely scenario because the developer is a hard person to get access to. You have to know somebody who knows somebody. And they're very busy building a building, right? They may not necessarily want to hear your smart home pitch, but the real estate agents, even if you're coming in a little bit late, the building's already being built, are willing to listen to you because they want to move those units, and they want a clear differentiator between what they're selling to the market and what somebody else is selling. So that model that I showed earlier of how you make money, well, you take the developer out of it, if the clicker will let me, and a little bit of the profit as well, right? This is the raffles. So one of the projects they're working on currently, this is the brochure that we've done for the raffles. We've even increased our production quality on this one to match a very high-end luxury condo. And you can see, once again, the exact same content, just elevated to the next level. That luxury car brochure look and feel to it, it just executed. Upgrade packages, we've even put in a page for support now. These relationships that you're gaining from high-end owners who, by the way, own a second or third house, they're bringing you in on other projects. We had to tone down what we could do in the model unit here. Part of it was just being realistic. The model unit was already built. So we put in Lutron wire-free palladium shades along one facade. And then where you see the red is we put in lighting control, right? And we just used a RAW3 Lutron system and integrated the two things together. And we put these little placards up around the model unit just to show where there's additional functionality. All right, and let's see how those numbers are playing out. Now, this is a current project for us. Like, literally, we're working on quotes. I was working with Hector and Chase, quoting things out today, right? And so these numbers are still very, very early. And in fact, since I submitted this presentation, they've moved as well. So it's a small slice of the pie, but there's 141 units in this luxury condo. So compare that to 64 in the previous one. So even if we're getting a smaller slice of the pie, it still could be very significant. It can still be an easy six-figure, if not seven-figure project for us. So out of the 141 units, we're currently engaged in 15 that they've contacted us just through introductions to the real estate teams. We've lost 2, we've won 6, and then whatever the rest of that is, 7 are still in play. For the ones that we've actually closed, our average upgrade per unit, this says 29,800. It's actually 32,000. I just ran the numbers this morning from HubSpot. So the numbers are there, same as before. 30,000 plus, a lot of shades, but a lot of units. Now, I think in the end, we'll probably get about 25% conversion on this project. I mean, we're already, working our way through at least 10% of these units right now. But I think we'll get to 25. It is going to be competitive. There are other vendors who are on the vendor list, but we're preferred because we put in the model unit technology. So that's just a quick summary of how we attack this sort of segment of the market. It's very different than the traditional smart home, luxury single-family home approach. But I wanted to kind of just show you a little bit of what our insight has been on this, and happy to answer any questions. And that also has my name and my email address. If anyone has any questions, feel free to tap in. So if you have a question, feel free to go up to the podium. Otherwise, happy to move on to the next one. Oh.
Hi. Do you have any solutions for MDUs where there is a single owner or rental communities?
Where there's a single owner?
Yes, we work with developers that they are building like they are the single owner of the entire facility, and they are renting every single unit to different.
Right. So the developer is essentially functioning as a landlord, right? And what we found, it's not that it's not possible to do it. You just don't generate these numbers, right? If the landlord is renting, if me as a landlord, if I put in $30,000 worth of Lutron shades, am I going to be able to charge more for rent to make that up? It's very hard, right? And so when you're dealing with luxury owners, people that have spent $2 million, $3 million on purchasing a condo, it's very easy for them to say, oh, well, I'll spend another $20,000 to make this really nice place to live. And so I think that's the challenge. Where we've found success in the rental market has been working with the developers on amenity spaces, access control, and security, which you probably have already seen. Security cameras, those types of things. If they have, spaces to do, maybe they have a work from home area, or they have like a lounge area, those types of things. But that doesn't tend to drive large numbers and high margins. And so that's why, we really have tackled the luxury condos as our target. So, all right. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.